Welcome back to the Brotherhood of Gaming.com. I'm your host, William Morris. Wow, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. Interesting game. I mean, kind of a little bit of a misleading title if you think about it, because you can play as more than just the heroes in this game. I mean, the villains are available too. Just saying. Kinda weird. Anyway, Capcom did a lot of interesting things with this title that differentiated it from its first one. For better or for worse, it happened. But before we get started, I want to share with you guys a little bit of an interesting story. You see, back in the early days of the PlayStation 2 and stuff, back when the Sega Dreamcast was still in its heyday, I was able to find this game and its console at a flea market for only 12 bucks. Can you believe that? I don't know, I guess people were just trying to get rid of these things back in the day, because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for a time was really an expensive game, reaching over the $100 mark, or at least as far as I saw. So, coming across the game, being able to play it outside of arcades was almost really tough to do. I mean, not many people had it on the Sega Dreamcast, but the game and the console for 12 bucks was just sitting out there staring at me, and I couldn't refuse it. So, that's my story on how I got to play it for the first time. So, let's get into the review.
So here is the game that is really the mother of all Mugen games. Capcom pretty much said screw it and just threw in everybody. Quite literally everybody they could think of. Even a couple of characters that did not have sprites previously. Hell, even a few new ones. Drugs for everybody. Actually, for a time, this game was really hard to get a hold of. I don't know why, but back in the early to mid-2000s, a PlayStation 2 copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was really demanding of high prices, with the Dreamcast version being not too far behind. So playing this back then, outside of an arcade, was a bit of a struggle. Well, until my Sega Dreamcast story happened. Anyway, you get the idea. However, recently, over the years, the game thankfully is now, I think, more accessible because of all of the new releases on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. So ultimately, I guess we can be thankful. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 really shows how creative Capcom could be back in the day. Instead of copying and pasting the same game as before, they instead made an entirely new gameplay style which was a little more simpler to pick up. Here, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 features 4 attack buttons instead of 6, 2 weak and 2 strong, and instead of 2 characters, you instead have the choice of 3. The rules still pretty much remain the same. You start with 1, and you can swap out at any time between your 2 partners. The first one to knock out all their opponent's characters win. In arcade mode, you battle team after team of AI opponents until facing off against the game's final boss, Abyss, who has 3 forms, and yeah, they're pretty freaking hard. Unlike the first game, however, there is no personalized endings, and, well, that pretty much does it for the story. There just isn't one. There is also a score attack mode, however, and a training mode, so that's there if you need it. There are no assist characters this time, which means as of now, this game has a whopping 56 playable characters. From the Marvel side, we have Captain America, Wolverine, Hulk, Thanos, hey, Iron Man's here! Oh, and so is War Machine. Again. Psylocke, Cyclops, Storm, just to name a few. Hey, look, even Cable made it to the fight. On the Capcom side, we have a ton of Street Fighter characters, also Mega Man, because of course, Darkstalkers characters, and Tron Bonne from Mega Man Legends. But the real standout is Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, who can attack with a mixture of military weapons and summoning zombies. She can also summon Tyrant from one of her hyper combos. That I can accept, but since when could she turn herself into a fireball?
God damn, I couldn't do any of that in the classic Resident Evil game. You have any idea how helpful that would have been? Going through long, narrow hallways and then all of a sudden, whoosh, fireball, zombies out.
Moving on. You can use the 4 attack buttons to mix it up, but here you can also call out to one of your partners for an assist. In the selection screen, after you choose your character and what assist move that they can perform. So when you initiate the trigger, which calls out your ally as an assist, they can either do a projectile move, give you a healing item, and various other things. As before, when you take or give damage, the power bar at the bottom will fill up. Only this time, it can go up to 5 bars. And just like before, when bars are available, you can perform your hyper moves for inflicting great damage on your opponent, as well as performing a team attack by pressing both the assist buttons at the same time. While launching was a part of the first game, here it is given so much more importance. By pressing back and diagonal along with a heavy attack, you can send your foe up into the air. Afterwards, you can immediately hit up, and then you can follow them up into the air and perform some air combos on them. Or air raids, as it were. This really gives the game a more vertical feeling. You can have the characters jumping all around like ping pong balls, but this is a good way to keep on the move and get the drop on your opponent.
Yeah, just hope that none of them know how to play this game, because once again, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, much like the first one, has a lot of much needed memorization for a lot of these combos. And if you go in button mashing, well, that might do okay for an artificial intelligence or, once again, somebody that's at your particular skill level. But once again, if you're fighting anybody who is even remotely competent at these types of fighting games, they will definitely make quick and short work of you. You know those kind of players that take this kind of game too seriously? That's the kind of fear that you need to have.
The combat does honestly feel a little more easier to jump into, but while it may not have the complexity of the first, this one I think does in the long run feel more inviting. It's more like a party game, I guess. Back in the day, you can bring over your Sega Dreamcast, pop this sucker in, and have a ball with your friends. Graphically, the game still features the 2D sprites as before, but now the backgrounds are rendered in 3D, making this one of those 2.5D type games. The visuals, however, I gotta say are kind of a mixed bag. And while the backgrounds all look nice, they are still pretty bland when compared to the other backgrounds from the original game. But one thing that I can certainly say did not come over well was the music. I mean, honestly, what the hell is this?
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
I know the soundtrack has its fans based on nostalgia, but to me, it does not hold a candle to the first game. Now, a major selling point about this game is, of course, the roster. In fact, when you think of a fighting game roster, they tend to think of this one right here, with its mass numbers. Unfortunately, though, that has been kind of a curse on the genre, and so many people are quick to dismiss a game for not having an overly huge roster. Which is really not fair, because I would much rather play a game that has a small roster filled with unique and interesting characters than a big gigantic one with a handful of only good ones. And another problem with the roster is that it is way too unbalanced. Some of the fighters are just better overall characters than others. All of these characters, while being in the same game, definitely were not created equal. I know that is part of the charm of this game, and if you are good enough, you could probably get good with any of them, but it is very clear that some of these fighters have a distinct advantage. So overall, how do we feel about this game? Well, truthfully, it is a good game. I slightly prefer the original, but this one is not without its merit. While the presentation and music are a bit the gameplay was easier to get into, the constantly moving back and forth with all of the characters led to some truly frantic gameplay, and made for some really fun times with this one. Still to this day, getting these for retail can be pretty costly, so the best way to find this is probably via download. In the end, the game is an unbalanced mess, but it is also a lovable classic that I love to revisit again and again, even when I know I'm inevitably going to get my ass kicked. Also, one final note, on the PlayStation 3 version of this game, you can adjust the look, from widescreen to classic 4x3 and add filters. You can also do the same thing with Marvel vs. Capcom Origins as well. So if you really want to capture that old school feel, well, then go right ahead. I do like to go with the original look, so I feel the game flows better. Stretching out the backgrounds at times can lead to some awkward moments.
Unfortunately, not long after Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Capcom would inevitably lose the licenses to all of the Marvel characters, which meant pretty much the end of the Marvel vs. Capcom series. At least that was until 2010, when, out of nowhere, Capcom announced Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Fate of Two Worlds. Ugh, a lot of interesting memories with this game. At the very least, I can say it'll be an interesting experience to share with you all. But until next time, I'm William Morris from the Brotherhood of Gaming.com, and we will see you on Marvel vs. Capcom 3.